Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Recovery to Practice webinar titled Meaningful Connections, Engaging Communities to Promote Recovery. My name is Elizabeth Whitney, and I'm your host today. After some housekeeping and a short introduction, we'll begin the presentation. On behalf of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration and the Recovery Practices team, we'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us. We have over 100 people who have already joined us, and we expect that that number will grow. And I've seen from the lobby slide and from our map that we have people from almost all over the country, so that's very exciting. I'd also like to thank our presenters, Susan Manzi and Bruce Anderson, for sharing their knowledge and experience with us today. So some housekeeping. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a download materials box where you can download our presenters' biographies as well as a PDF of the presentation slides. You can do that at any point during the presentation. At the end of the session, you'll also be able to download a certificate of attendance that you can use to apply for continuing education credits with your professional association. This webinar has been pre-approved for continuing education hours from NADAC, the Addiction Professionals Association. To qualify for these continuing education hours, you must attend the full webinar, and you'll have to complete a brief quiz that we'll show at the end and an evaluation. We'll give you some more information about this at the end. You'll also be given, everyone will be given an opportunity to provide us with feedback, and we really value that. So please take a few moments at the end of the presentation to complete that survey. And finally, if you have registered for the webinar, you'll be emailed a link to view the archived recording. And this link will also be available on the RTP website. This webinar series is hosted by SAMHSA's Recovery to Practice. The overarching goal of this initiative is to improve the knowledge and ability of the behavioral health workforce to use recovery-oriented practices every day. In 2011, SAMHSA released a working definition of recovery and a set of guiding principles that incorporate aspects of recovery from both substance use and mental health conditions. SAMHSA's working definition of recovery in behavioral health is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. The 10 principles of recovery shown on this slide, along with the 4 dimensions of recovery, home, health, purpose, and community, form a solid foundation for developing recovery-oriented lives and for building recovery-oriented services and systems that are necessary to support them. SAMHSA's Recovery to Practice initiative helps you turn these principles into workforce practices. RTP offers a set of discipline-based curricula to promote understanding and uptake of recovery principles and practices. Developed by these 6 professional disciplines for educating their membership about recovery and behavioral health, these materials are adaptable for use by other disciplines and organizations seeking to build a recovery-oriented workforce. Links to these curricula are available at SAMHSA's RTP website. And now RTP is expanding its discipline focus to embrace multidisciplinary settings and integrated settings. Those of us who work in behavioral health or integrated healthcare organizations really have opportunities every day to promote wellness and recovery. We can powerfully communicate hope for recovery and the value of self-care and wellness just in how we approach our work. RTP can help you strengthen your recovery-oriented practice through free webinars, newsletters, and training and technical assistance opportunities. Today's webinar will provide information on the value of helping to build welcoming places in communities that benefit both individuals in recovery and the community at large. So I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Susan Manzi is the Executive Director of Youth in Mind, a California-based nonprofit organization founded and steered by youth affected by the mental health system. As an advocate, community educator, and organizer, Ms. Manzi speaks to the injustices affecting vulnerable families and young people within systems of care. She dreams of a day where neighborhoods can share resources, restore justice, and speak peace to one another, keeping people out of systems and thriving in communities. Her lived experiences as queer, a third-generation foster care survivor, and a psychiatric thriver have empowered her to develop and deliver approaches for systems change in both mental health and child welfare. Recently, attending the Harvard Kennedy School of Government as a fellow with the New Organizing Institute, Ms. Manzi studied under Professor Marshall Gans, grappling with the struggle of frontline communities, upholding psychosocial wellness as a core value in social justice and liberation work. As an artist, Ms. Manzi strives to bring holistic healing and the creative arts into her political work. Bruce Anderson is managing partner of Community Activators and lead trainer. Community Activators' mission is to implement innovative social service, education, and community development practices across the United States and Canada. In addition to degrees in teaching and rehabilitation administration, Bruce brings a unique blend of experiences, including being the mayor of a town, teacher, manager of social service agencies, and commercial fisherman. He is known for bringing intriguing ideas from other cultures and times, personal stories, and practical ideas into the workshops he leads. He is the author of The Teacher's Gift and 2 audio CDs, Hope at Work, Creating Positive, Resilient Organizations, and Our Doors Open, Creating Welcoming Cultures in Helping Organizations. So without further ado, Susan, I'd love to turn the presentation over to you.
Hello, good morning from California. Still morning here. It's really beautiful to see the map and just all of the diversity. I also want to thank SAMHSA just for putting this together and helping us. I was really just touched to be able to be reached out to, and when I heard that the title of this was about meaningful engagement, engaging communities to promote recovery, that really is not just sort of my story wrapped up into a sentence, but it's also the story of our organization. So a little bit about me and just sort of my advocate journey. I was born into systems. I'm multi-system impacted. I was 2 months when I entered into the child welfare system, and I'm a survivor of generational struggles with poverty. Bipolar runs heavily in my family, and so do addictions. And I was the 5th born to my biological birth mother, which I want to start with her here. This is the first picture I actually saw of my birth mother. I was so fortunate to be in a pilot project when I was 22 years old, and family finding within child welfare was really starting to kick off, and they wanted to work with advocates that had been working within system transformation but didn't necessarily have what they call permanency, a connection to your birth family or somebody that maybe it's your community or identified family. So a bit more about my story. I was adopted out of the system for about a decade before I re-entered as a teenager, and at the time I was adopted, it was closed adoption. So when they approached me and wanted to engage me in family finding, I was like, absolutely, of course, if there's resources, but also good luck, because any of those that you might be adoptees out there, it's really challenging to be able to find like who you are, what your connection is, what your story really is. And so all I ever knew was that my mother was at the time diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she couldn't take care of us. And so there were 5 of us born. I was the youngest of 5, and we all went into child welfare. Fortunately, I did get connected with her, and I was 22 when I saw this picture of her. And out of all 5 of us, I am the one that looks the most like her, kind of has the same personality, really the same sort of hope and drive and passion, and we're still connected to this day. And unfortunately, I spent the most time like kind of in systems and also experienced the most trauma out of all of my siblings. And so the one kind of flip side about that is that I really understand what it means to have lived experience, what it means to struggle, what it means to be able to recover and engage in systems. And so kind of my connection now with my birth mother is really profound, because she still is actively, she has active episodes and goes in and out of systems. And so, yeah, so we're able now that all the siblings are connected with our birth mother to be able to support her in a different way that we never have been able to. So really, I want to talk a bit more about sort of my, my moment of change, which I aged out of foster care at 18, and I really had nowhere to go, and I didn't have much direction. At that time, I didn't have any family support, any community support. However, at the time, California had passed a proposition called Prop 63, which is now called the Mental Health Services Act, and there was a lot of engagement within systems. And so one of my workers had said, hey, I think that there's this committee that would be really great. I went in, and I was the only young person there, and it was like more of an integrated setting. There were a lot of directors. There were a lot of program managers. It definitely was not a space for young people or youth engagement, or even, I would say, those of us that have lived experience across the ages. And toward the end of the meeting, the co-chair, or the chair at the time, actually, she, which I didn't know was the director of mental health, she had asked the question, well, let's hear from the youth, because they were making all these decisions. And I was very green at the time, and I just said, well, what youth? And everybody kind of laughed, and I made the point that we were like right across the street from the largest high school in the district, and I just sort of was a natural organizer before I had really known what community organizing or community engagement truly was. And so the director was pretty impressed with probably just how, kind of direct and straightforward I was, and she asked me to co-chair the meetings, and that really started my journey into systems transformation. And from there, a lot of community-based organizations and nonprofits reached out to me. So, so the powerful thing is that it was really about the community and shared experience that I found in these spaces that gave me the hope and really gave me the skills and the education and the passion to be where I am now, which is leading with a team of very profound and dedicated and resilient young people building what we call a movement, but building this organization, Youth in Mind. So a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit about like sort of hope, because the first time I was an attempt survivor was at the age of 13, and really that was because of the lack of resources and access and just community spaces that I felt really alone, and so I'm really a big person about having like positive affirmations, or always trying to remember and spread that message of hope. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I think sometimes when we are in those dark spaces, we don't always remember that there's something in us that the world needs. And I also want to refer to this, that sometimes when we are in dark spaces, and whether it's you yourself or maybe you're helping somebody else that has lived experience trying to engage in systems transformation, but even when it rains, look for rainbows, and when it's dark, look for stars. I also want to refer to a really powerful resource that you'll get out in your email, but if you don't necessarily get it now or you want to look at it later, it's also on the SAMHSA website, and it's called A Journey Toward Health and Hope. And it's a handbook that's actually made by attempt survivors, and it's very powerful. It's very workbooky, so it has personal stories and narratives by other attempt survivors, and they also have different questions and guides that are really about how do you ask those courageous questions, or when those questions may be asked from you, if you're just exiting out of a hospital or something, what you might be able to prepare yourself when you're really starting back on that journey to recovery. So who are we? There was a little bit about who the organization is in my introduction. We're a grassroots nonprofit. We're steered by young people ages 12 to 28. Our young people are engaged in everything from our program development to even our governance, and we make all of our decisions with our young people, even as far as like writing grants and whatnot. So we have a really big emphasis on education and skill building, so that young people can be able to have the skills and the confidence to be able to engage in us when we're making those strategic directions. And this really comes from the fact that we started out just as a grassroots coalition, and there were literally 12 of us in the room, and the age range came from the youngest person being 12 and the eldest person being 28, and from the community seeing that there really was a need for having sort of that cross-generational mentorship. And our mission is to transform the lives of those impacted by mental health systems in California through education, advocacy, and collaboration. And so most of our work is really around empowerment education and building the skills so that we have effective advocates that are making partnerships with key decision makers. So if you want to check out our website, here's a picture of our website. It's yimcal.org. Maybe I'll put it in the chat box like after I'm done, and you can like see more about our pictures and whatnot. So I know I've kind of talked a lot right now, and I want to take a break because I always love to know like how much you all are engaging your constituents and direct decisions that impact programs and organizational policies. So I just kind of want to get a temperature feel for out there. Looks like there's a few more people coming in. It looks like the poll's kind of slowing down, or there's a bit of a range still happening. However, anywhere from sort of, it's ranging about 55 to 65% of you say yes. There's about a fifth of you, about 20% that are saying no, and then maybe 15% of you actually saying not really sure. So really excited to know that there's some folks out there, about 60% of you that are engaging your constituents into direct decisions, and there's about another like 35 to 40% of you that either aren't really sure or you haven't really taken that step yet. So this whole presentation is really talking about how we engage young people and really about wellness and building themselves like holistically, and then really starting to understand how to be able to help us direct organizationally. So I talked a bit already about sort of leadership development and systems transformation, and that's sort of our tagline. That's our niche. We do this mainly through collaborating with other organizations and building advocacy skills, and really education is kind of the core of all of our programs. I always love to give sort of some of the faces. So this is a statewide audience, and this is at one of our conferences. We do a lot of workshops and leadership summits and conferences, and so this is really the heart of what our young people love to do, which is just to be able to connect with others that are in stigma-free spaces, hate-free spaces, and really being able to connect with people cross-regionally and cross-culturally that have that shared experience. So everything that we do in our organization is about parallel process, and if that's kind of a bit of an academic term, it just really is meaning that we're sort of learning as we're doing, and we're trying to put everything that we learn into practice. And so our frameworks are really about having holistic transformation change, and we look at that both like individually, collectively as a community, and then also on a systems level. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is learning organization theory, which is just really, it's about a theory, and I'm going to give you both sort of the theory that backs this up, but then also giving like real life examples about what this looks like. And so learning organization theory in very simple terms just basically means that you're an all learning and you're an all participatory organization, and that you're really thinking almost from like being more of a healing organization, thinking about the individuals and the participants that get engaged. You're also thinking about the community and your mission impact, and then you're really thinking about also systems change, both internally within your organization and externally. And so what this means in terms of when we're working with young people is that we start off in the very core about just getting to know them, about building relationships, having them do wellness planning, even teaching them about wellness, because oftentimes our young people are coming from communities that don't necessarily talk about wellness, don't necessarily uphold it. And so we break down about what is wellness, what is resiliency, what is trauma, what is grief. So we start there and start building like even personal or professional goals they might have. We even provide executive coaching for our young people. We try to put like support networks around them. So really thinking holistically about how to wrap education, support, and knowledge and skills around those that you're working with in order to effectively give them the personal mastery, engage them in the shared vision of whenever we're making decisions, and starting to even build their analysis around even defining their, sorry, I was trying to read the chat, but it's also distracting my thought right now. But maybe we can save this to the Q&A time. And then even getting them to think about like sort of systems thinking, so that when we are partnering with whether it's behavioral health or juvenile justice, child welfare systems, that our young people are able to articulate their shared experience and really think about what type of shifts need to happen. So building organizational structures for positive well-being. I talked a bit about resilience, and if some of you have never heard the term, really simply resilience is about never giving up and kind of your ability to be able to bounce back from hardship. Here's some domains to kind of be thinking about resilience from, whether it's around like social, education, around friendship, your community, around sort of directing young people based on their talents, their interests, and their positive values. Here's a really great image, and a lot of these are going to be very image and visual oriented, because we actually do these trainings with our young people so that they can start to think about behavioral health and really about trauma, grief, and resiliency in their own ways. And we don't necessarily think of loss and grief in a linear way. We think about it in a much more like circular way. And so this is a great wheel in case any of you haven't seen it before. It just sort of talks about when you're not necessarily processing your loss, that you might be going sort of in a circle. And over to the right-hand side, there's a bit about the deterioration, what that might look like, whether you're not sleeping at night, you're unable to eat, or maybe you're crying, or you have a loss of appetite. So some of those ways that when we're really starting to get escalated and our stress about how it impacts our bodies. And then really this image talks about like when you're able to process that, how you're able to start moving even toward your recovery process. And a really fascinating thing about resiliency that we always talk to our young people about is that resiliency actually was a mathematical term. It comes from mechanical engineering when people are building infrastructure or bridges and whatnot, that it's the point when a structure is about to break. And so psychology adopted that and started putting it toward, human development and our ability to recover. And so we kind of always talk about like what's the history behind a word so that we can even think about how we might be able to fit within that puzzle. And that really brings me to Maslow's Law. We talk about Maslow's pyramid of human needs because oftentimes we have to build different pathways of leadership for our young people, especially around wellness, because some young people may be homeless, they may be really experiencing poverty, and they may be in different parts of sort of their development. And so we even talk to them about Maslow's Law so that they can understand about how you need your physiological needs met and how you just need your basic like housing, food, sleep, water, how you need to feel safe and secure. And then once you kind of bypass that, then you're able to get into more esteem building and self-actualization. And so along that journey, we're always making goals and kind of revisiting those goals and trying to make sure that those domains are effectively taken care of so that we're kind of getting to the self-actualization part of Maslow's pyramid of human needs. Also, I just want to refer you to the 8 dimensions of wellness because we have a lot of activities that break down. Most of the way that we're able to take this kind of from the education theory base is that we actually make everything art-based, and so that it's doing in incremental stages, and there's lots of activities that we do. I can send people out like sort of our wellness plans and some of the instructions about how to be able to incorporate art into this. And then I have about 2 minutes left with you, so before I pass it on to my co-presenter, so I'm going to briefly talk about stakeholder theory. This is a really, a good image to kind of talk about stakeholder theory, and it essentially just talks about like having organizations like think about like who are their stakeholders, and our main stakeholders are our young people that we work with, and then we have lots of secondary stakeholders, and so we use this to be able to think about how to structure within our membership even a governance team, so that whenever we're making critical decisions, whether it may be resources that we're getting, whether it's like what communities that we should be focusing on, whether it's what areas we need to be doing, we have a team of young people across the state that work with us to be able to direct those decisions. And so I know that I'm almost done on time, so I want to talk briefly just about interdependence, building organizational structures for positive well-being, and I'll go through this speedily. So I do want to reference that this was part of my learning when I was in that fellowship that we talked about in my bio, and this is a common form of leadership in organizations, the Lone Ranger leadership, which sometimes I also call the identified leader, that there's just like one leader that's always making the decisions. And then there's kind of another sort of example that's that we're all leaders, but there's nothing really like connecting that leadership, and so sometimes things can still sort of fall apart. And so this is the last structure I want to show you that's more about interdependent leadership, where there's still somebody that may start with an idea in the middle, but they build teams. And so everything that we do, we never do anything alone. Even if it's about going out and doing a presentation, we never just have one person. We always have minimally 2 people or more. And so even when we're in our think tank, if we're planning an event or a conference or things, we'll always have maybe the person that has the idea but forming a team around them, and then based on your strengths and your interests, you may have a certain like domain of the planning or the program or the decision making, and then they build teams. And so this is just to illustrate interdependent leadership. And without further ado, I can answer more questions or points of clarity in the Q&A, but I want to pass it on to my co-presenter, Bruce Anderson, and give him just a little bit of tech time to come on stream and unmute. Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
Hi. Okay.
I'm there. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you live. Thanks, Susan. That was great. That was really great. I want to spend 20 minutes or so coming from a little different perspective. But first I want to let you know that my entry into the recovery movement comes as someone who does not have the experience of being in recovery. But it comes from the most important underlying yearning in all people in recovery, and that is to lead a whole, healthy, healed life. And I certainly have been engaged in that my whole life. I walked off a fishing boat 25 years ago, unsure of what I was going to do with my life next. And I wandered into a social service agency to volunteer, and through a set of circumstances, in pretty short order, I ended up being the director of that organization. And things were going along fine, but I noticed I was falling asleep at my desk, and I thought I was just overworking. I thought I was tired. I thought I maybe was getting burned out. And I made a series of trips from Alaska, where I was working in that organization, down to a neurology department and physical health department in several different hospitals. And after 3 trips to Seattle, no one could find out anything wrong with me until I went to a therapist. And it took the therapist less than a half an hour to figure out what was wrong with me. And what was going on was that I was working in an organization that was supporting people who were at serious forks in the road in their life for many different reasons to change their life and to heal and to be a part of our community. And it was triggering my own stress and my own PTSD around my own story. And I didn't know that was happening. And so I was blessed to sit with someone who could help me understand that. I was really sick during my teen years, out of school a lot, lost all my friends, lost all my relationships, and became very alone in the world. And for me, I tried to move past that, but of course, until you deal with this story, you can't move past it. And so working in that organization with people who were trying to belong triggered my own stories of not belonging. And until I began to work with that idea and figure that out in my own life, things did not get better. And so our organization called Community Activators is about belonging. And we work with all different kinds of individuals and groups that are trying to figure out how to make a community welcoming for everyone. And about a third of our work has been in what used to be called the mental health movement and is now called the recovery movement. But I come at it from that perspective of recovery maybe, oops, I got to change it, figure out. Recovery may not actually be enough. That maybe there's something else after recovery. So I want you to read the statement up there and tell me your first response to that statement. Just one word. Recovery is an individualized healing approach adopted by many individuals and health systems. It is a very good thing, but it will not, it cannot get us to the end goal of full participation for people in recovery in their communities. So what's one word response you have to that statement? And we'll let a few answers pile up on the screen. You'll see a chat box in the center of your screen on the bottom, and where it says enter message here, if you type in one word and press send, we can begin to see the cumulative hunch of the group. Interesting. A lot of positive statements in agreement. And a lot of supportive words around the idea of community building, empowerment, and resilience, and success. The largest two words are true and agree. I think the cumulative hunch of the group around recovery not being the end of the road comes from a bone language that all of us have that says that in the end we need each other. In the end, this isn't just about individual healing. In the end, it's about the community. Go back to a full screen here. Farmer from Kentucky, a very wise man, Wendell Berry. I believe that the community in the fullest sense, a place in all of its creatures, is the smallest unit of health, and to speak of the health of an isolated individual is a contradiction in terms. So he comes from a community building perspective that says we need each other, we can't get along with each other, and then we both have to work on ourselves and then be with each other. Community builders think of it like this. There are two basic ways to move forward. One is called a personal preparation model, and that's where a person does things to prepare or activate themselves to be a part of a group, a relationship, or a community. So they might go to school and learn a trade. They might join a recovery group. They might seek out active friendships, but everything they do is to prepare themselves to join a group. But there's an exact opposition to that, a different force going in the opposite direction, and we call that community-focused welcoming. And it's when a group reaches out to include people. The person doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to prepare, doesn't have to be better in any way, doesn't have to be healed. The group says, here, come and be a part of us. And that has a different ring and feel to it. And the idea here is that both the top and the bottom are necessary. So examples of the bottom, community-focused welcoming, might be a school that decides to eliminate special education classrooms and have all students be in the same classroom together. It might be a church that decides to welcome everyone. It might be a workplace that decides to get beyond the surface levels of diversity and really talk about what it means to share power and have decision-making working at a both fair and productive level in an organization. So I think if the recovery movement is going to expand, one of the ways to think about that is that we have to keep doing recovery. We have to get in it. We're nowhere near there. But we also have to begin to focus more on a community-focused welcoming model. And there are two different ways to do that. One is to begin to approach a community through recovery-initiated focuses. And those might be things like stigma reduction or starting more recovery groups or creating more employment opportunity for people who are in recovery. But the focus is on people in recovery being part of the community. The other way to approach community-focused welcoming is to have no focus on the recovery group, but to instead say, what would it take to make our community better for everyone? And things like that might be part of initiatives that increase transportation. It might be churches opening their doors more fully. It might be joining different kinds of coalitions that are trying to improve parks or general well-being in a community. So the idea is we both need to get the word for recovery out, but we also then need to not speak of recovery and begin to be actively engaged in things as residents of communities without a special focus on recovery. There's a couple good reasons to do that, 4 that I can think of. One is that it sends the message that everybody in community needs to belong. Second is that it doesn't pit one group against another for resources. I work in a lot of communities where the youth groups are fighting for dollars in their organization with other kinds of groups. It also surfaces people that are hidden from your cause, and it increases confidence in community problem solving. We could walk down the street and we could ask the first 10 people we run into, who's responsible for the people who don't have a place to sleep tonight? And it's likely that most everyone you ask would say, oh, the social service agencies or the city government. So it's not until people, residents in communities, begin to take back some of the responsibility and feel like they're part of the initiative to create a welcoming community that you get that kind of community action going. So I want to do a poll now based on the slide that I just showed you. And I'm wondering which one of those 4 benefits for you or your organization right now rings as being most useful. Which one of those 4 is most energizing, most useful to you as you look at them and vote? Wow, we have a trend going here. Just pretty overwhelmingly in the top one that everyone needs to belong. Again, I think that, I know for me, that taps into this bone level wisdom that this can't just be about recovery, that we can't get there without focusing on a whole community. That's great. So I want to quickly give 5 examples of this other side of the fence when we switch to the idea that we can work on whole community issues and at the same time benefit people in recovery who are included in those initiatives. So quickly, 5 things. The first one I mentioned already, approaching schools not from creating higher quality plans for people in behavioral health classrooms, for instance, but asking a different question: what about if we tried to create a more welcoming and a higher quality school in general? I was part of a group outside of Ottawa, Canada. There was a school district that had been, that was being sued for discrimination on a lot of different levels, including the way their behavioral classrooms were set up, the way that recent immigrants to that school district were being treated. And rather than try and solve those individual problems, they did something which is a true community building movement. There were 6 high schools, and they got coalitions of 15 students across a wide span of interests from each high school, and they gathered those 90 students, 15 students from 6 different schools in a room together, and they spent the day talking about how to make their whole school more welcoming. There were people that just had moved from different countries. There were students from behavioral classrooms. There were all different kinds of students mixing it up, them solving the problem: how do we create a more welcoming school? As a result of that day, each school decided on 3 things that they were going to do, and the 15 students who had come representing their school took responsibility as an action group to get that going. We asked them to think about schools from 6 different perspectives, because it's more than just a lot of people saying hi to you. You can do things in all 6 of those areas on the screen that makes the culture of the school more welcoming. The second example has to do with the Chamber of Commerce. There were 60 or 70 social service agencies, including mental health organizations, up in the Tahoe Valley in California. And they were trying to engage more with the business community, who up until that time, the basic relationship was asking the business community to donate materials and goods and participate in raffles. But the human service agencies wanted more of a connection. So the head of the Human Services Coalition sat down with the Chamber of Commerce president for lunch to try and decide on one word that would join their interests. And the word they came up with was welcome. And so that spawned the Tahoe Valley We're a Welcoming Place initiative. They created an assessment tool that every business could use. It was self-administered, and if you scored above a certain number, you got a giant decal like the one on the screen to stick in the front door of your business. And so if you're walking through a community, for instance, Truckee, California, a few years ago, and you would walk from door to door, you would see this decal in the door of businesses. So they were trying to build a culture of welcoming. The interest in the human service agencies was to get the help of the business community to mutually work on issues that were of interest to both the social service agencies and the business community. And one of them was not just relying on the social service agencies and the police to respond to issues downtown, particularly around issues of homelessness. And so they have good anecdotal stories now as a result of working on creating a better relationship and a welcoming culture in their communities, that many times the business people were taking it upon themselves to offer assistance and to help people, and not just calling on the human service agencies. The third idea is to expand beyond a strength-based and recovery model to a gift-based model. Systems are fond of strengths. They're a good thing. As systems and governments changed from just talking about what was wrong with the person and what needed to be fixed, organizations began to make lists and categorize things that were working. It's a really powerful thing. But it only gets us halfway there. Because when people are at serious forks in the road in their life, they tend to use not just their strengths, but they tend to use these very particular powerful attributes called gifts. 3 different kinds of gifts. You can read on the screen: gifts of wisdom, information from outside of us that tends to change the course of our life, including other people and spirituality. Gifts from passages, which are the strengths that we get from going through difficult times in our lives. And gifts of talent, which are genetic gifts. Our bodies and our minds are set up to do certain things better than some other people can do them. So there are assessment tools available. If you email me, I'd be happy to send you some, and there's a wealth of information on our website about this idea. But switching from a strengths model to a gift model is a powerful way to send a message of hope and capacity to someone who is at a fork in the road in their life. They matter, interestingly enough, for the same reasons that we're all saying recovery matters. Gifts matter because of hope, gifts matter because of authority, gifts matter because of belonging, and gifts matter because of wellness. The second thing is to start a welcoming action group. A man in our town was interested in, he was the ex-head of special education. He was interested in creating opportunity for students in special education. Instead of doing that, he asked the question, what about if we created more opportunity for everyone in our town? And so we began to have a set of coffee clatches with different people, and at the end of every event, every coffee, he said, who's the most welcoming person you know? And within a month, he collected 17 people, all of whom had an interest in welcoming, and they started what we have called the Welcome Vashon Initiative. We held a public event in our town, the 15 of us. We didn't know if anyone would show up or not, but 165 people showed up, and out of those 165 people, 24 projects came, 19 of which got completed, where if you're doing community organizing, you know those are really good odds. Those activities are on the website. We've since all moved on. We're all on to different initiatives and different things. The Welcoming Communities Initiative in our town lasted a couple of years to accomplish 24 things. And you can find out more about that at welcomevashon.net. We left the website up because there's been a lot of interest in both how we did that and the accomplishments. So you're welcome to go and peruse that website. It's going to naturally collapse, I think, July 15th. So I'm going to go through the slides describing that, and you can look at them in the download. The last thing, the fifth thing, suggestion is leave to learn. That one of the basic concepts of creativity is if you want to innovate, you got to get out of your own bubble. And so in the downloads, you'll find these websites, all of whom have a lot of information about this idea of when we create whole welcoming communities, where do we start and how do we do it? So I want to close down, but before I want to do that, I want to refer to somebody who's been a big teacher of mine, a man named Parker Palmer, who has said one of the basic questions we all need to answer in our lives as individuals and whole communities is, how are we going to live divided no more? Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Bruce, thank you for your presentation, and thank you, Susan. Such rich information and rich material. I mean, Susan, you talked so well about, in such detail about how you help prepare youth to be leaders and to really be part of the community, but then really going beyond that of thinking about expanding our focus beyond work with individuals to addressing community, to addressing organizations and community. And you both, through your own personal stories and your material, spoke so eloquently about the critical value of belonging to community in creating hope and sustaining hope and recovery. So I thank you for that. I'd like to take a few minutes to ask you a couple of questions, and Susan, maybe I'll start with you. You described some very clear aspects of kind of how your group approaches your work, and it sounds like a very well-developed culture. But you also talked about a lot of your work being collaboration with other agencies, and I'm curious how you go about doing that. How do you kind of preserve the culture of your organization while kind of honoring and engaging in the culture with the organizations that you're collaborating with?
Yeah, in a very similar approach that we work with our young people, we do the same thing with any agency that wants to partner with us. And we never take away from the visioning part, which I think is really often when we start getting higher up into leadership or organizations really start to sort of lose that maybe that grassroots or sort of member-driven or audience-based driven culture. You go into a meeting and you sort of just talk about loosely what the vision is and what numbers might be, but we sort of stop people there and actually engage with them to work with a team of our young people and make it very think tank-like and I love what Bruce was saying about sort of the gift buckets and yeah, so really thinking about like what gifts like your organization has, where are your strengths, like what's your unique niche, where are the areas that we're able to actually partner with, and then once we kind of get clear on what that is, we actually start getting more into like, okay, how do we actually be real about what this means and developing MOUs or contracts about how we're actually going to share this, and then going into grant writing or even if it's just as simple as like program sharing or sharing information, but kind of more when we start getting into the MOUs and sharing grants, that's talking more about, like resource sharing or partnering on things, which what I call sometimes program ego. Like sometimes your like program ego can like get in the way, and so we just talk really upfront and honestly and being transparent. But really the key part is not letting that visioning aspect go and not really making sure that we're making decisions without those that are most impacted.
Mm-hmm. That's great. It gets back to your talking about parallel process, and it sounds like you live your values in whatever situation that you're engaged in. Can you give any examples of the types of collaborations or partnerships, some kind of concrete examples of those that you've made?
Sure. There's one county that we work with that's pretty great in Northern California, very close to the Oregon border, Humboldt County, and they have an organization called HCTC, the Humboldt County Transition Age Youth Collaboration. And perhaps because they're small, but they're able to move things quicker, and it's very relationship based. But I also think it's part. It illustrates part of their values that they usually bring everybody to the table, and they have integrated services, and they have their youth like in every part of our aspect, and nothing. Even if it's like a revision of the contract or whatnot, then the youth still review it and still give feedback. And we do a lot of like workshop building with them. We even like share like what is common contract language so that they can be effective at the table. And really it's all about like their voice and what their local community needs are first. That's great. That reminds me that you were saying you were having a hard time following the chat, and really part of what people were responding to is this notion of, well, what do we mean when we talk about involvement of constituents? And that's what you're describing, because involvement can kind of run the whole continuum from having someone kind of just a name, or people who are really, really involved. And your model really talks about how deeply involved you help people, the youth, have in all aspects of what you're doing. So Bruce, a couple of questions for you as well. The first one has to do with, you're talking about kind of this about advocacy work, and when you're talking about community welcoming, there's so many possibilities. There's so many options. How do you know where to start?
Well, I think there's a couple ways to start. We had great success just by a man named Dan Kaufman in our community. He originally started, what he was interested in was creating more opportunity for kids in special education, students in high school, to have more to do after school. They were just very isolated. And he decided to switch to thinking about how can we create more things for everybody in our town to do. It was very simple. He had a friend, and he had coffee with that friend, and at the end of the conversation, they were talking about welcoming in our town. He said, "Who's the most welcoming person you know?" And then Dan contacted that person. And in a very short period of time, he collected 17 people from all walks of life, all of whom had an interest in welcoming. And we began to meet monthly over soup, and after a couple of months, we decided to see if anybody else in our town was interested. And we were really scared. We thought that maybe no one would show up on a Saturday morning when there was shopping and yard work and vacuuming to do. But 165 people showed up, all of whom wanted to do something related to making our community more welcoming. So it was zero money, very little effort, and 24 ideas, workable ideas of actual things to do. And what I didn't say that I want to say is that one of the dilemmas we get in when you try to measure this kind of community action is somebody would say, well, how many people in recovery were involved in those things? And what I can tell you is there were lots of people in recovery involved. But the beautiful thing about it is they were participating and included in a general way in making our community better for everyone. And there isn't really a need to call out anybody as representing a particular self-interest group when you're doing this kind of work. So it's hard to measure, but it also gets us to the end result we're looking for, this idea of a whole healthy community.
Yeah, that's fabulous, and that makes a lot of sense. Have you had experience of people in recovery or people who are working on their recovery as the kind of promoters or instigators of ideas for community welcoming activities?
Sure. You know, as long as they make the shift from this is about community to this is about me, this is about recovery to this is about me belonging. When people hang on to it all being about belonging, they never quite can do the community stuff because it's always the point they want to make. This is about recovery. And so you have to give up the need to constantly be talking about that and switch gears and get into, well, maybe I'm part of something bigger in my town that's about whole communities. And both are important, but they involve a different set of gears to work with.
Yeah. It's a mind shift, it sounds like, of really talking about what does contribute to recovery, and that when we talk about the wellness of the community and belonging of the community, that creates a space for recovery is what I'm hearing you say.
Right. Yeah.
Getting back to the notion of wellness, Susan, you were talking about the work that you do with wellness and with kind of following Maslow's hierarchy. I'm curious if you could give some examples of how that works, of some kind of on-the-ground work that you've done with that, and any differences that come up with different groups that you're working with.
Yeah. Oftentimes, if we're just meeting a group and they need to have more of an introduction with us, we integrate art and creativity a lot. We talk about wellness just in general, like what is it and why is it important, and really gaining from that group and that community about like what does wellness mean to them and why is it important to them. And then we have an activity where it's like based on the 8 dimensions of wellness, where you're thinking of at least like 1 to 3 different activities that you might do, and you're somehow creatively illustrating that. And then we might talk about more as a collective about like what common themes come up, and just really having like rich dialogue and debriefing about that, and then even thinking to higher level, like beyond us, like what that might look like either on organization or community levels. So that might be just sort of first introduction, and then we had a really neat project where we worked with young people in 3 different areas, one in Humboldt, one in Sacramento County, and another one in Alameda County, where we worked with them across regionally to actually think about like sharing across geographic areas about how to think about the stigmas that we might face, and then also to just promote community healing and wellness. And so they came up with great ideas where we would have like barbecues and just community picnics, and they created like wellness packages. And we really would just sort of hit the streets and allow people to have free wellness packages and sharing resources. And it engaged in so much conversation to where we'd have like 50 plus people just like coming out and and people that we don't normally traditionally engage if we're in like behavioral health communities.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And that's a perfect way to connect the work that you're talking about and the work that Bruce is talking about. So I really thank you both so much for that. I know there's more we could talk about, but we're coming to the top of the hour, so I want to. We're going to have to wrap up for the time being. Here is contact information for both Bruce and Susan, and again, thank you so much from the Recovery to Practice team for sharing your wisdom with us today, and hopefully sparking some interest in thinking about community and thinking about engaging community and going out and finding out who are the welcomers in each of our communities. Really appreciate that very much. We also invite you to email us at Recovery to Practice if you have any feedback or any thoughts about other webinars that we can do. And coming up, we're excited about the next two webinars that we have. The third in this series on community will be next week. That's on creating recovery-oriented, person-centered plans with community resources. And then following, right on the tail of that, the following week is our next webinar that's connected to our newsletter, and this one's on diverse families and the cultural formulation interview. Should prove to be very, very interesting. So please join us for those, and if you're not able to join us, as usual, you can find the archived versions of those on the Recovery to Practice website. And finally, if you're interested, again, in receiving NADAC continuing education hours, you can click on the link that's right here on this slide, and that will take you to the quiz that will allow you then to receive your certificate. If you're not going to do that, you can download the participant certificate below, in the box below, and do take time to give us feedback when the feedback link comes up. So on behalf of SAMHSA, I'd really like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to join today's webinar. We appreciate your interest, and again, thank you so much, Susan and Bruce. This concludes our webinar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.